Well, we turn now to Britain, which is continuing to mourn last week's murder of parliamentarian Jo Cox. She was stabbed and shot last week in her district after meeting with constituents. Her murderer, Thomas Mayer, reportedly yelled out "Britain first" during the attack, a reference to the far-right anti-immigrant political party of the same name, which is pushing for Britain to leave the EU in tomorrow's Brexit referendum. Cox was a vocal advocate for Britain to remain in the European Union. More information is coming to light about Mayer's ties to neo-Nazi groups in the United States and Britain. The Southern Poverty Law Center here in the U.S. has revealed Mayer is a longtime supporter of the neo-Nazi National Alliance. Documents released by the center show Mayer has spent over $500 buying periodicals and other items from the group, including a manual that contained information on how to build a pistol. In addition, the Daily Telegraph is reporting Mayer subscribed to SA Patriot, a South African magazine published by White Rhino Club, a pro-apartheid group.
Meanwhile, a former paid FBI informant named Todd Blodgett has revealed he met Thomas Mayer at a neo-Nazi gathering that the informant set up in London in 2000. Beginning in the mid-90s, Blodgett worked with several leaders of the far right, including Willis Carto, who founded the Liberty Lobby, and William Pierce, leader of the neo-Nazi National Alliance. Blodgett was also a co-owner of Resistance Records, the world's largest neo-Nazi music label. Todd Blodgett is joining us now from his home in Iowa. Todd Blodgett, welcome to Democracy Now! Tell us what you know about this man, Thomas Mayer, who killed Jo Cox.
Yes, thank you. I met Tommy, he was known as Tommy when I met him in about May of 2000. I had just begun working as a paid FBI informant in March of that year. William Pierce, who was the main guy with Resistance Records, but also my co-owner, wanted to convene a meeting in London because there was a Leeds chapter and another chapter of the National Alliance. And the purpose of the meeting was to promote Resistance Records, let people know that that William Pierce was the new owner of it. He bought it from Willis Carto, and also to gain more customers and get distributors for Resistance Records. And Mayer was one of the people invited to the meeting. There were about maybe 17 or 18 people at that meeting. And it took place just off of the Strand in London in the spring of 2000. And as I said, he attended the meeting along with Stevie Cartwright, Richard Barnbrook, Nick Griffin, who was sort of like the David Duke of England at that time, and several other people who were either members of the National Alliance or supporters of the NA.
Now, why were you at that meeting representing Mr. Pierce?
Well, of course, Pierce did not know that I had agreed to work for the Bureau at that point. And he wanted to go over to England for the FBI. That's correct. He himself wanted to go, but he was precluded by law from being able to go there due to the fact that he couldn't get in. I mean, his views kept him out of England. So he sent me in instead because he and I were the co-owners of Resistance Records at that time. And when I began with the FBI, I told them about what Pierce wanted to do. And right away they said, well, we're going to accompany you. So the day before I arrived in London, 2 FBI agents, an IRS agent, and a JTTF agent, that would be the Joint Terrorism Task Force, flew in ahead of me. And they had me meet with the 2 guys from the MI5. They gave me a cell phone to use when I was there and that kind of thing. So that's how it all worked out.
Why did you decide to work for the FBI? I mean, were you a neo-Nazi true believer?
I was never a true believer. I was never a Holocaust denier. I'm not a bigot or a racist or anything. I was basically, I guess the best way to say it is I was greedy. I was an opportunistic profiteer. I didn't look at the consequences to myself or to others of what I was doing. And I never wanted to be a Resistance Records shareholder, but Willis Carto of Liberty Lobby owed me money. And when he went bankrupt, his Liberty Lobby went bankrupt, they gave me stock in Resistance Records in lieu of that, and that's how I became the co-owner. What had happened with regard to Pierce was is that after the deal was signed with Pierce, and he gave me a consulting contract he insists I take as part of my stock sale. He wouldn't buy the shares without it. We went to a place called the University Club of D.C. The Washington Post got a hold of the article, and it caused a big uproar there, and I was expelled from the club. I was given the option to resign or be expelled. I was expelled, and basically that's when the FBI caught notice of this, and the agents came to my office in downtown D.C. and they said, look, we're not after you, but we know you've worked with all these people, whether it's Cardo, Pierce, David Duke, all the head honchos among the racist right. As a profiteer, will you help us? And that's when I agreed to go on as a paid informant.
Now, this meeting that occurred in 2000 in I think it was in Leeds in England, these were some of the top neo-Nazi or white supremacist leaders in England. What kind of interaction did you have with Thomas Mayer, and what impression did you take away from him at that meeting?
Well, first of all, the meeting was actually in downtown London, not Leeds, but there were several people from the Leeds chapter at this meeting. And I, as far as Thomas Mayer, I would say the best way to describe him, he was kind of like a working class guy, but very, very well read. I mean, he was discussing a book or two that he had read by David Irving, the Holocaust denying pseudo historian, who I also monitored. He would probably, I guess the best way to describe him is just nondescript, well-mannered. When you go to a meeting like this, any kind of gathering, the guys, and they're always all guys, there's a lot of bravado, a lot of macho, a lot of braggadocio going on. People talk about who they beat up last week and how they took on 6 guys and kicked their butt. They brag about their womanizing. Mayer was none of those. He didn't do any of that. He came by himself. He actually left by himself. As he got there, he was respected by the people that were there. He knew some. They knew him by name. He was not an outgoing guy. If you were to ask me at the end of that meeting and say, of all the guys there, who would have been the least likely to even start a fist fight, I would have said Tommy Mayer.
According to British media reports, Thomas Mayer, or Tommy Mayer as you call him, was a subscriber to the pro-apartheid magazine South African Patriot in Exile. This week, the Southern Poverty Law Center published 2 letters that Mayer wrote to editors of the magazine. In 1999, Thomas Mayer wrote, quote, "I was glad you strongly condemned collaborators in the white South African population. In my opinion, the greatest enemy of the old apartheid system was not the African National Congress and the black masses, but white liberals and traders." And then in a 1991 letter to the publication, Mayer wrote, quote, "The nationalist movement in the UK also continues to fight on against the odds. Despite everything, I still have faith that the white race will prevail, both in Britain and in South Africa. But I fear that it's going to be a very long and very bloody struggle." Those are the words of Thomas Mayer. Todd Blodgett, what was your reaction when you heard who was the man who murdered the Labour MP, Joe Cox?
When I first saw his picture, and I recognized him right off, when I first heard his name, I remembered it. You know, my first reaction was, gosh, I mean, this is, aside from the fact it's a horrible thing, I thought, you know, this wasn't the kind of guy I would have picked out to do that. I would have thought someone like Stevie Cartwright or someone would be more likely to do that. They were the more, you know, the more brutal types. But then I realized a lot of people that I monitored, which included a guy named Wade Page, who did a similar thing. He went into I think it was a Hindu temple in Wisconsin and killed a bunch of people about 3 years ago. Sometimes it's those very kind of guys that are the most lethal, which is why Tommy Mayer and people like him represent such a huge challenge to MI5 and the FBI and other law enforcement, because they can be dormant for many years. They can be on the radar, then they go off the radar. They're the kind that, you know, they're not the kind that, Tommy Mayer was not the kind of guy you pick out to start a fight in a bar. He was not like a tough kind of guy. He didn't pose as a tough guy. He just basically was a nondescript kind of guy. And I thought, you know, obviously his hatred has not changed. He just found an outlet for it, and he finally decided to try to go out in a blaze of glory. And that was my reaction.
And Todd Blodgett, you did this undercover work for the FBI, but yet you've also been public since then about your activities. Are there any concerns on your part of your own personal safety as a result of the work you did to uncover the activities of some of these white supremacist groups?
I do have some concerns. I live in Texas as well as in Iowa, and I've had strangers walk up to me in bars in Texas and call me, I won't say these words on the air, but, you know, they'll use the N-word. They'll use derogatory names for Jewish people, and they'll say I'm a blankety blank lover or a race traitor, that kind of thing. So there's always that concern, but I will say this, and I want to get this out. I have a concealed carry permit that's good in 37 states, and I'm legally armed. I'm armed right now. And so if they want to try to make a fight with me, they might take me up, but I'm going to take them with me.
The presidential election right now, the support that Donald Trump has gotten from, for example, David Duke, right, the former Klan leader, white supremacist. Your thoughts on white supremacists in this country, Klan support of Donald Trump?
I think it's very tragic. I mean, anyone has a right to support what they want to, but I worked for Reagan for many years, and when Reagan was endorsed by the KKK in the fall of 1980, his response was a very good response. He said, look, just because they buy my philosophy doesn't mean I buy theirs. Trump kind of stumbled over that thing. I don't think Donald Trump is a white supremacist, but I'm very disturbed by the fact that he's got support from them, and I'm also disturbed by the comment he made about the judge. I can't think of Judge Curiel, I think his name is, but he made a stupid reference to the fact that he's of Hispanic descent, which is totally irrelevant to the case. I've worked with David Duke. I monitored him for the FBI. I've monitored all these people. They're, without exception, a bunch of sociopaths. They're just bad people, and most of their supporters tend to be bad people too. So I don't want to see that kind of thing as being any part of the Republican Party. I'm still a Republican. I was for Jeb Bush for the nomination, before that for Dr. Carson. But I don't want to see that part. I want this flushed out of the party.
What is it about Donald Trump, you think, that attracts white supremacists, neo-Nazis?
I think it's because they recognize in their world, to their way of thinking, demographics are destiny. That was one thing that William Pierce always said. Cardo said that. Dr. Ed Field said that. They believe that demographics is destiny, and I think they feel that a Donald Trump presidency would be conducive to not only stemming the demographic changes, but to reversing them. If Trump, could actually do what he claims he wants to do, that's their attraction to him.
On Tuesday, Joe Cox's husband, Brendan, said his late wife worried about the direction of global politics.
I think she worried that we were entering an age that we haven't seen maybe since the 1930s of people feeling insecure for lots of different reasons, for economic reasons or security reasons, and then populist politicians, whether that's Trump in the US or whoever else, exploiting that and driving communities to hate each other, saying that the reason that you don't have a job or the reason that you're feeling insecure is because of this powerless person, not because of choices that we're making, and that was driving people. It was creating an atmosphere of hatred.
That was Brendan Cox, the husband of Joe Cox, who was murdered by Thomas Mayer. Your response, Todd Blodgett?
I think he makes a very valid point. I feel terrible about what happened to his wife, who, by the way, today was her birthday. Today would have been Joe Cox's 42nd birthday. I think he makes a very valid point. I know a lot of people in Iowa and Texas and people I met when I was infiltrating these people. They basically, I'm talking about white people here, they blame almost all their problems on minorities. They blame all their problems on some of them, the white supremacists tend to blame their problems on Jewish people. They seem to find a scapegoat for everything. They seem to scapegoat such people for all their problems. They say, hey, this is why I can't get a job and hold it. This is why my girlfriend dropped me. This is why I'm addicted to crystal meth. Everything that goes wrong, they blame these people for, and it's a very disturbing trend. There's no question about it.
Todd Blodgett, we want to thank you for being with us. Todd Blodgett, conservative Republican political writer, former co-owner of Resistance Records, the world's largest neo-Nazi music label. From 2000 to 2002, he was a paid FBI informant who worked undercover within white supremacist organizations, helped to set up a white supremacist meeting in London that Thomas Mayer attended, the man who murdered the Labour member of Parliament in Britain last week, Jo Cox. Today, she would have turned 42 years old. She leaves her husband, her constituents, and her 2 little children. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.